All right, let's move on. Getting high, then hitting the highway. Sounds pretty loose. But Aussie researchers have convinced some Dutch volunteers to do just that in the name of science. And what they've found might change the way we think about drug driving laws.
Aussie drug driving laws are pretty tough, and with good reason. Studies suggest it's now a bigger danger than booze. Over a 3-year period, 15% of hospitalised drivers in South Australia tested positive for illicit drugs, predominantly ice and cannabis. And over a 9-year period, 21% of drivers who died on New South Wales roads had an illicit substance in their system. But the presence of drugs doesn't always prove driving impairment, a distinction the law doesn't recognise.
And this roadside drug testing is used as the first line, and it basically means that impairment is inferred if you do produce a positive roadside drug test.
Also, not all drugs are created equal, and as the popularity of legal medicinal cannabis grows, Dr. Thomas Sàrl believes our understanding needs to grow along with it.
I mean, we've got a pretty good idea of what THC does to driving, but we don't really have any idea of what CBD does.
Those are the 2 cannabis compounds with known therapeutic effects. It's believed CBD could potentially treat epilepsy, schizophrenia, and even type 2 diabetes, while THC, that's the psychoactive stuff, is a powerful anti-inflammatory and painkiller.
We didn't really know what happens when you put THC and CBD together, as you often find in medical cannabis products.
So he and his team went to the famously laid-back Netherlands, home of the coffee shop, to investigate.
This is the only place in the world where we can actually do this kind of on-road driving.
26 guinea pigs, healthy, occasional recreational cannabis users, were given either CBD, THC, both or neither. Then they were unleashed on the open road. OK, put in a dual control vehicle with a trained instructor alongside them and asked to keep it together. An hour or so after vaping, the THC-assisted drivers were distinctly dodgier than those who'd puffed on a placebo. But 5 hours after vaping, the difference was negligible, and CBD didn't really make any difference at all.
Whether participants had received a placebo or CBD, we saw no difference in terms of driving performance and also cognitive performance. The other major finding, the effects of THC had largely worn off.
Despite that, detectable quantities of THC can still stay in your system for up to a week, and if police pick it up, the law's black and white.
Ultimately, if you've got it in your system, like alcohol, you are impaired. There's no ifs or buts.
There's a lot of other medicines that people use regularly, things that we know can impair driving, like Valium, for example, or certain painkillers. But we apply one set of standards to these drugs, and it's a very different set of standards to what we apply to cannabis.
Have a great night.
What they do is they test for minute detectable levels of drugs, cannabis, cocaine, amphetamines. There is no relationship between that detectable level and being in any way adversely affected.
Australia is really the only country in the world to have a widespread random roadside drug testing program. So other countries tend to only use it as a secondary or a confirmation step.
In June this year, retiring magistrate David Heilpern told the project he was sick of seeing lives ruined by needless licence suspensions.
It has a huge impact on people in the country. If you lose your licence, you lose your job, you lose your house, you lose your relationship. These things go with the territory.
When it comes to drug policy, pollies can be pretty hard to sway.
The car is a lethal weapon if the driver is not acting responsibly.
That's why, you risk a hefty fine and a 3-month immediate suspension on your driver's licence.
But knowledge is power. So will this landmark study be enough to prompt a rethink?
But the feeling is not about science, it's about politics more than that, really. Anyway, I suppose we'll find out in the long run.